Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind my colleague, perhaps he's forgotten, that the House dealt with the Zika crisis and the Zika virus. We sent a bill over to the Senate, and it was the Democrat members of the Senate that prevented that bill from being debated and voted on in the Senate. We have done our job in the House of Representatives, and on a bipartisan basis. The gentlewoman will not yield. The gentlewoman will not yield.
Gentleman is recognized.
And we are doing our job in the House of Representatives. I believe we passed 24 bills in this House on Monday alone. So we're doing our job, Mr. Speaker. We have problems with our colleagues' counterparts on the other side of the Capitol. Mr. Speaker, and I'm going to say again, the S-304 does not stop a woman's choice. It's important, though, for us to understand what's at stake if we don't pass Senate Bill 304, the Conscience Protection Act. Not only will the state of California be allowed to continue to violate federal law, but it's likely that other states will follow suit with similarly drafted rules and regulations, forcing more and more churches, religious charities, and employers to decide between honoring the tenets of their faiths and helping their employees by providing health insurance. Further, S-304 allows health care providers to file a civil right of action when they face discrimination by government or subsidiary agencies. Currently, the only recourse a health care provider has available is to appeal to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Civil Rights. Recall that this was the same office that conveniently reinterpreted the Weldon Amendment, allowing the California Department of Managed Health Care to force churches to pay for elective abortions. Additionally, the Office of Civil Rights has been notoriously slow to adjudicate complaints. The groups who filed the appeal in the California case waited more than 2 years for a decision. And a nurse forced to participate in an abortion and then required to reassemble the parts of a dismembered baby waited 3 years for her complaint to be resolved. That's unconscionable. It's become clear that health care providers cannot rely on HHS and the Office of Civil Rights to defend health care providers from discrimination. S-304 provides this protection and gives these entities recourse when they choose not to participate in or facilitate abortion. I urge my colleagues to support the bill. Mr. Speaker, this rule also provides for consideration of a motion the Senate amendment to the House amendment to S-764 GMO labeling requirements. This bill leverages Congress's authority to regulate interstate commerce and will establish a uniform standard for labeling bioengineered foods that is easy for consumers to access and understand. This standard provides food manufacturers with regulatory certainty and a single national standard with which they must comply, rather than a patchwork of dozens of state and local regulations that vary from a complex list of details to no labeling at all. Mr. Speaker, it is disappointing, though not surprising, to hear my colleagues criticize the Conscience Protection Act. Congress has a long history of providing freedom of conscience protections, and this bill ensures that health care providers are protected and can continue serving their patients, customers, and communities as they have been, without threat of government coercion or retaliation. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this rule and the underlying bills. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
Gentlelady yields back. The question is on ordering